Hello. Welcome to North Country History with Rob Berg. This is Rob, and today we're going to talk about a special topic that I didn't plan that we'd ever be talking about, and it is what is the future of the U.S. Forest Service and our national forest system? So settle in, sit back, and enjoy the show? I don't know about that one. North Country History with Rob Berg, your podcast on the forest history of the Great Lakes region. First, before I get into this commentary that I'm going to talk about here today, I just want to apologize for the kind of the up in the air about season 3's schedule here. I just haven't had much time to work on everything. I was ill here a few weeks ago. I'd had a really bad head and chest cold that left me to where I could hardly talk and coughing a lot and just felt generally crummy. So it was really hard to do the episode I tried to do on the part 3 of the Pigeon River Country State Forest. And we'll get to that one eventually, but it's just not happening at the moment. And I'm starting the process where I'm going to be looking for a new job or transferring in my current job to another location, actually, and be moving this year. So season 3 will happen as it happens. There's going to be some missed weeks like what we've had the last 2 weeks, and I apologize on that. But we'll get it back going again. It's just 2026 is going to be a little bit of an upheaval. And then we have news that came about here just a couple days ago. I'm recording this on Saturday morning, April 4th. And on Thursday, April 2nd, news came out of Washington that was very upsetting, discomforting about the U.S. Forest Service. And that is the plan to relocate the headquarters of the Forest Service from Washington, D.C. to Salt Lake City, Utah. And along with that, they're going to be downsizing the Forest Service. How that affects us here in the Great Lakes region is up in the air, but we know for sure that right now there are 57 research offices across the United States, and they're going to close a number of them, combine them, and that will leave eventually only 19 through the United States. Yesterday, an article was shared to me by my friend, Chris Shankleton, who we went to high school together, middle school as well, I believe. And she and her family, or she and her husband, live in the Upper Peninsula now, and she let me know about this article from Bridge, Michigan, an online magazine about kind of the news that's going on in Michigan, a lot of it coming out of Lansing, but in this case, coming out of the federal government. And it is Trump administration plans closure of 4 Michigan forestry research centers. And this one particularly focuses on the Upper Peninsula, but currently there are 4 research facilities of the U.S. Forest Service in Michigan, and they all plan to be closed. These 4 of them are located in East Lansing, I'm guessing on the campus of Michigan State University, and connected with the MSU's forestry program, where they have a very good forestry school. There's another one in Wellston in the Huron-Manistee National Forest. Wellston was a nursery that was established in the 1930s as the Manistee National Forest was created. The Huron and Manistee are 2 separate entities location-wise, and they were established as separate U.S. or national forests but are now administratively run as one larger combined forest. Then there is one on the campus of Michigan Tech University up in Houghton in the Upper Peninsula that is also works closely with the forestry college or forestry school at Michigan Tech, another leading forestry programs in the United States, and also with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, Forest Resources Division. And then a fourth one in Lance in the western Upper Peninsula in Baraga County, not far actually from Michigan Tech and Houghton. So that works probably closely with the same entities there. And as these become or be closed, the staff assumedly will be laid off. Some of them may transfer to one of the regional research centers, and in this case, the one that will serve Michigan will be the one that will be located in Madison, Wisconsin, an existing one, and it will now become a kind of a super or a larger regional resource center that will cover, here I'm looking at the Bridge article. Where'd it go on here? It will cover multiple states, including, of course, Michigan. It will serve a Madison, Wisconsin hub will serve Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Missouri. So the assumption is, at least for the states here that are heavily forested, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, having multiple research centers, and they're all going to get merged into one single one. And then less forested states, but still having forests, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Missouri, they will not have anything at all there in those states, and they'll have to get their, all of their resources out of Wisconsin. So this is, kind of puts us in a bind, and we don't really know how that will affect our state and our region. In Michigan, the Upper Peninsula has 8 million acres of forests that is both public and privately owned. Michigan as a whole, as I've mentioned in earlier podcasts, currently has 20 million of forested acreage in Michigan. At one time, it was 37 million. I recall the number when I talked about it in my Birth of Reforestation episode in the first season. So we're definitely, have a large area that's going to be affected. And a good portion of that is federal land. And one of the goals of the Trump administration through this is to sell off some of our forested lands. At least that was has been stated by members of the administration, by the Project 2025, and by the, what is his name? The senator out of Utah who wants to privatize much of the public lands in the United States. And this happening, coming to his state, it's definitely, thinking that that's part of the reasoning here. What is his name? Senator... Sorry, I don't have notes on this. I just felt I had to talk about this right away. I'm going to come to it. All right, sorry, dead air there. That's never a good thing on here. Okay, Senator Mike Lee, who has had repeated efforts to sell off public land. And in Utah, they're not a big fan of public land. There's a lot of public land there. The U.S. National or the Department of Interiors through the Park Service has national parks, a number of national parks and national monument lands. And they would like to sell off a lot of public land. So this strikes as a quicker way for that to happen. And they want to centralize the operations of the Forest Service in the West, where it claims that that's where most of their work is being done. And they want to open up more land available for logging. Now, yes, the U.S. Forest Service or the National Forests were created as reserves for forest lands for the forest industry. So they would have timber to log off over the years, but done in a scientifically managed way. And this strikes as rather much of a slap at that. They want to do the completely opposite. They want to cater to the private forest industry and have them cut as they want to cut and not as it's been professionally managed for more than a century. President Theodore Roosevelt created the National Forest Service with his good friend and advisor, Gifford Pinchot, in the early 1900s. 1905, I believe, was the year of it, without looking at my resources right now. There had been forest reserves prior to that, but they had been managed through different agencies. And then the U.S. Forest Service was created as kind of the central agency to manage these forests. And through the efforts of Roosevelt and Pinchot, the national forest lands were greatly expanded, including here in the East. Prior to the creation of the National Forest Service, there were no national forests east of the Mississippi River, and most of them were located in the Rocky Mountains and further west. So we're looking at all of our national forests in the eastern United States results from the work of Roosevelt and Pinchot and then their successors. And will those be eliminated, including here in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota? We don't know. That's the problem, is so much of this is unknown of what's going to happen. But there's precedent. During the first Trump administration, they tried to relocate the Bureau of Land Management to the west, to Grand Junction, Colorado. In fact, they had moved the administrative offices there, lost a large number of employees for those who were located in Washington who chose not to relocate and positions were eliminated. That will happen with the Forest Service with their planned move to Salt Lake City. So you'll have the loss of a lot of institutional knowledge, scientific researchers. You're going to have, administrators who have come up through the ranks of the Forest Service, probably many of them starting as, supervisory foresters in different regions and ranger districts, maybe some here in Michigan and the Huron, the Manistee, the Hiawatha, the Ottawa National Forest, along with in the Chequamegon and Nicolet National Forests in Wisconsin, the Chippewa and Superior National Forests in Minnesota. That's knowledge that where will they go? Some will find work in the States. Some will find work with nonprofit agencies that have worked with Forest Conservancy. But the idea is to have them pushed out of the way. Again, this is commentary. I don't know all of this is factual as of yet, but it's conjuncture that we know how things have been operating, not only for the last year and a half right now, but also for previous years from 2017 to 2021. So it's definitely a disconcerting time for what's happening here. I've tried not to be political on the podcast here. I have talked about climate change and the concerns on that, and that has become a political football. But now, this is something I've not, I can't ignore. I have to share this. And what happens here in our forests, it has wide-ranging effects. The forests, the Canadian forests are not immune to this, because if our forests are logged off here in significant numbers in the Midwest, in the Great Lakes region of the United States, that environmental effects won't be stopped at the international border. There will be a carryover where land borders are shared. If there's a wildfire that, for example, breaks out in the Superior National Forest, and burns uncontrollably because there is nobody to control that. And I say in the Superior National Forest, assuming it still exists in name, but it burns across the Boundary Waters region of Minnesota or up through Voyageur National Park and burns into Ontario. And now it is most definitely Ontario's problem. But even if the fire is contained prior to the border, there's the smoke, there's all of that blows into Canada. And we know from wildfires in the West how it has, really has hurt the air quality in the areas further east by how the wind currents blow particulates in the air. And it's a danger to everything that we work for in environmental history and for those that are lovers of the forest. Yes, I'm looking at the worst case scenarios here. It's doom and gloom, but it's something that we as lovers of our forests, we can't stand for and let happen. I don't know how we can stop it. This is brand new. I was afraid this might happen at some point with the new Trump administration, with everything that has been happening. But it was something I hoped wouldn't come to this. I'm going to start quoting some information here, some words in the Bridge, Michigan article. And if you want to find this online, I have it. It was shared to me, as I mentioned, by my friend Chris Shankleton. And Bridge, Michigan is www.bridgemichigan.com. And I was having trouble on my laptop this morning at finding it through the Yahoo search engine, which is now what is being used on Google. I'm not happy with that on Chrome, that they can't use the Google search engine anymore because of monopoly. But I still had it saved here on my phone, so I was able to read it. And I'll share the link on my website on my Facebook page, so you can read it on there. And that's Rob Berg environmental historian. I have my own public Facebook page, as I've mentioned before. But so here's I'm gonna read this here. The Trump administration plans to close 4 U.S. forest research facilities in Michigan, shifting scientists out of the state as it reorganizes and consolidates the agency. Officials have not announced a closure date for the facilities located in the Lower Peninsula communities of East Lansing and Wellston, between Manistee and Cadillac, and the Upper Peninsula communities of Houghton and Lance, saying changes will be implemented over the next year. The Forest Service headquarters will also move from Washington, D.C. to Salt Lake City in what Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins describes as a measure to save money, boost logging, and put workers closer to the landscapes we manage. So I mentioned they consider the West as the land they manage. They don't consider here in the East. Establishing a Western headquarters in Salt Lake City and streamlining how the Forest Service is organized will position the chief and operation leaders closer to the landscapes we manage and the people who depend on them, Rollins said in a news release. The announcement prompted dismay in Houghton, where workers with the U.S. Forest Service's Northern Research Station collaborate closely with researchers at Michigan Technological University and the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. A smaller group in Lance conducts forest inventories and analysis. So this is really UP focused. Okay, so here we have David Flashpolar, Dean of the University's College of Forest Resources and Environmental Science. I understand priorities change from one administration to the next, and this administration is interested in increasing the volume of timber that is coming off the national forest. To do that in a sustainable, safe way, you have to have people that are trained in the latest science and silviculture. Flashpolar estimates between 20 and 25 people work at the Houghton station, including scientists and other staff. The station has a multi-decadal history of partnerships with researchers and foresters in the UP. The heavily forested Upper Peninsula contains more than 8 million acres of forest land, split roughly evenly between private or locally owned timberland and state and federal forests. 2/3 of facilities cut. The Michigan facilities are part of a network of 57 nationwide. 19 will remain following the closure, with the Forest Service instead establishing regional hubs that serve multiple states. A Madison, Wisconsin hub will serve Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Missouri. Michigan DNR spokesperson John Pepin said leaders in the state forestry resources division are not yet sure how the changes will affect the state agency, which works closely with federal planners. It's pretty apparent that the details and individual impacts to a lot of our programs are not worked out yet. The biggest change appears to be in Houghton, Pepin said. The facility houses the Northern Institute for Applied Climate Science. There's a mark against it, which Pepin said is relocating to Fort Collins, Colorado. He said DNR and university officials in Michigan and other Great Lakes states have worked closely with the Institute for many years, assessing the climate vulnerability of forests, developing adaptation strategies, and applying it to forest management. The Republican Party, which I happen to be a former member of, has consistently denied climate change for for several decades, 2-3 decades. I don't know exactly how many, but since it's become a topic, there has been major denial in it. It wasn't clear whether layoffs would occur as part of the reorganization, but the administration's announcement emphasized the reduction of administrative duplication. The Forest Service will provide employees and partners with detailed transition guidance as different milestones approach, stated the agency release. The agency press release described the move as a structural reset and a common-sense approach to improve mission delivery, some critics have described it as an effort to shrink the Forest Service and shift its mission away from protecting forests and toward logging and privatization. Utah has been a frequent battleground for debates about public lands, from the fight over Bears Ears National Monument to a lawsuit by the state of Utah that aimed to take control of millions of acres of federal land, and Utah Senator Mike Lee's repeated efforts to sell off public land. The reorganization will wreak havoc on the Forest Service management and organization, adding fuel to the unpopular narrative by officials like Senator Mike Lee that public lands should be sold off to private industry, said Josh Hicks, Conservation Campaigns Director at the Wilderness Society. At a time when wildfires are getting worse and access to public lands is already under strain, the last thing we need is an unnecessary reorganization. So that was from the Bridge, Michigan article that came out yesterday, April 3rd, and written by Kelly House. And again, I'm going to provide a link to this article on my Facebook page. I'll also do so on my Instagram page, which is North Country History. And also in the episode notes here on the podcast website. So if you want to look further into this is just one article that I saw, and there is a link to the official press release on there, and I'm sure a Google search will find much more, especially for those of you in other states. I know that I've got listeners throughout the country, and this is not just something that is going to affect the Great Lakes forests. It's going to affect all of our public forests in the United States, either directly on national forest lands or indirectly by those that are partners with the U.S. Forest Service. And it's scary. It is something that, I've dreaded as an environmental historian, that there's going to be things that happen that is out of the control of those who are the stewards, the land managers of the forests here in the Great Lakes regions and across, the North American continent, the United States and Canada and elsewhere. So this is something we need to see or to find out more about and see how we can take action. I don't know that at the time. There are other groups, there's other things happening that many people think take precedence. And, I'm rightfully so when it's talking about, the lives of human beings, the work with ICE and immigrants. That certainly is foremost on many people's minds, but this is just something else we need to look at. And again, I've never tried to get political on the podcast here, but this is something I think is far more than partisan, or than it's just a political fight. This is something that will affect everybody and everything. Our forests are an instrumental part of our environment, and it does far more for us than what we ever realize. So thanks for putting up with this today. It's an important topic, and I will try to get back on track with the rest of the episodes for season 3. I'm working on it as much as I can, but 2026 has been difficult with things happening from my mom's death and having to move and relocate at some point this year. I'm looking to do that later into the summertime. So there's going to be interruptions with the podcast. And I apologize for that, but it's just part of life right now. When things settle down, I will definitely have a much more regular episode series, for the seasons. But right now, I just have to announce that I'll be putting them out when I can. And I can't stick to my original schedule, and I apologize on that. But thanks for listening again. And, take this in, think about it, see how you can help in fighting this. As long as we have our vote, we need to use it the best way we can. Thank you. Bye. North Country History with Rob Berg is hosted, written, and produced by Rob Berg. Music is Crack o' Dawn, performed by Reveille, licensed through Soundstripe. Follow North Country History with Rob Berg on YouTube and on Facebook at Rob Berg, Environmental Historian.